So welcome to Experience Capitalization for Continuous Learning. This is the online course that we have divided in 6 different modules. We have reached now module 5, and module 5 is about the implementation of the experience capitalization process. And this module will focus more specifically on how to document and how to share the experience. Jorge is with us, and he will guide us through the whole process. So you see the whole process of documenting and sharing. So just as a little recap, you see this is the cycle of the experience capitalization. The first part was the preparation, where you were framing and planning what you're going to capitalize on. And then the second big phase is the implementation.
Many times when we have been discussing with participants, we have been, I think, everybody agreeing that when you are, for example, in a workshop and you are all discussing and you are all analyzing a particular experience, let's say you go back home and you have already achieved a lot, even if nothing else happens. You have already achieved a lot because you have been reflecting, you have been thinking a lot, you have been drawing conclusions, you have been discussing with colleagues. So even if nothing happens afterwards, I think that the benefit has already been enormous. But with the steps that we are going to be talking right now, what we're trying to do is to have even more results by trying to reach to those with whom we have not been in touch, or trying to expand the number of beneficiaries, to put it in one way. What we're going to be talking now is how to reach more people, how to share lessons, how to involve others. And whether we like it or not, most of that takes place through writing, through preparing documents, and then trying to reach out to the other persons, those who are not together with us, those who are not in a workshop, let's say, so that they also join the process and so that they also can get inspired or a benefit from the particular lessons. When we talk about sharing, when we talk about involving other people, most of the times we are talking about writing. Of course, we are all very good in talking and we are all very good in presenting an ideas, especially when we are face to face. But not only that, the way we are doing it right now, where we can discuss, exchange ideas through these online media. But talking, even if we are only talking, still we use writing a lot. We have been using writing to prepare these slides that you are watching right now. Writing is, as we say here, perhaps the most important element when we are talking about sharing information. As I said, we can talk a lot, but if we write and share a document, we are able to reach many more people. We can organize a workshop or a webinar with, I don't know, 10, 20, 100 participants, maybe 1,000 participants. But if we write a document, we are able to reach millions. At the same time, if we write, we are also able to store information in a better way. So whatever we do, when we talk about involving more people and when we talk about sharing the lessons, basically what we're doing is we're talking about writing. Of course, you are going to say writing is not the only way, because as I say, we talk and we can also, as we see here, we can also use other media. And nowadays, this is becoming more and more easy because we, for example, with all our mobile phones, we are now able to make photographs, we can make short videos, we don't need to hire an expensive camera or to get a cameraman to help us, we can just do it ourselves, and it works very easily. And that, of course, allows us to help and allows us to send and allows us to interact with others in many times in very easy ways. But I would think that even if we are, for example, just going to prepare a short video that we want to post online, we still need writing because we need to prepare the script and we need to share instructions and we need to make sure that this is going to be disseminated in the right way. So if we are thinking about videos or if we are thinking about big documents, either way, we still need to think a lot about writing and prepare ourselves for doing it correctly. The question is, how do we get going? Because one of the things that we mostly hear is that, yeah, writing, we write almost every day. We send ourselves emails, we write in our small documents, we write reports, but still we feel a bit uncomfortable because this is not really our job. We are not well, we don't dedicate ourselves to writing. We are busy with other things, and perhaps writing is just a secondary activity that we use to help what we're doing. So when somebody tells us, we have to start writing and doing this in a professional way, then many of us feel scared, and we feel that it is not something that we can do properly, or that we would rather not do and give it to somebody else. The problem is that many times there is not somebody else who can help us, so we just have to do it ourselves. And then we realize that perhaps it is not that difficult. Perhaps we just need to follow some tips and some tricks here and there, and we can do it, and we can do it in a very efficient way. When we're going to talk about writing, the first thing is we have to start with a sort of plan. And just like in any, let's say, in any small project, we have to think, why are we going to be doing? What is our main purpose? What do we want to achieve with this? Is it that we want to prepare the script of a video, or is it that we want to present, let's say, a funding proposal? We will be writing in both cases, but the whole process is going to be different. Or we might say, no, we want to write an article, or we want to write a blog post, which we are going to post online. As I said, the process might be similar, but we are going to be doing it differently, and we need to be prepared for that. Of course, as we're going to be talking in a minute, we need to know very clearly who is going to be reading the things that we will be writing. Is it meant just for our colleagues, or is it meant for people who are, let's say, far away in another country? That is going to also determine the process that we are going to follow. We need to make sure what type of product we are preparing, as I said, an article, a book, a blog post, or perhaps just some small thing that we are going to be putting online. And last, we need to make sure that we know how are we going to go about it, how long is it going to take, who is going to be involved, etc., so that we do it in the most efficient way. When we talk about writing, whatever the product and whatever the final document that we are thinking of, we normally think of a few principles. Um, yeah, this is not something that is really easy to grasp, and some people may agree or perhaps disagree with some of the items that are included here. But we thought it is important to add it because we all write more or less in the same way, and what's more important, we all read more or less in the same way. So all of us, whatever the job we have and whatever the document that we are reading, all of us prefer a document which is concise and which is precise, which we are where we get the information that we want relatively quickly. None of us wants a long document which is full of blah, 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 and where we find it difficult to get the information we want. So if that is what we want as readers, then that is what we have to offer when we write. So we have to try to be as concise as possible and really, as they say in English, go to the point. At the same time, we all like a document which is easy to read, which is attractive, which is not full of jargon. Most of you must have found a document somewhere which is full of acronyms, full of words that we don't understand. If you have to go through that document, it becomes difficult. And if it is difficult to read, then you don't get the information that you're interested in, and eventually you just drop it. So that is something that we find yeah, practically every day, and we don't like it as readers. So when we are writing ourselves, we have to think of those persons, or think of those who are going to be reading, and we have to try to provide the text and the information in the most attractive way, in the easiest way, so that the message goes through. The third of the principles, of course, the document has to be appealing. People have to want to read what we are reading, because if they are not interested, they are simply not going to read it. And this is even more important nowadays when we are all reading a lot of information on the internet, because, as you know, it is very easy to go from one page to another. So if I'm reading something on the internet and I find it a bit boring, I can, in practically no time, drop it. I just click somewhere and then I go to another document. It makes it very easy to search for something else, to go looking. If I don't find immediately what I want, I just go to another page. So we have to make sure that the documents that we are preparing are not going to be dropped, because if the reader drops it, then we haven't achieved what we want. And the last of the principles that we have here is that the document, the text that we are adding, has to be rigorous. Of course, it has to be based in facts, and those facts have to be presented, and they have to be argued, and they have to be, well, with evidence, with the right evidence, with the information, with the data, with the opinions, because the reader has to believe what we are saying. If we are presenting information and this information is, let's say, not taken seriously or not believed, then we are just missing the point. We are not going to succeed in any of the things that we are doing. So, as I said, this is just the principles that we have to remember throughout the process. Of course, there's no rule on how to do it, but we have to regularly remember, as writers, we have to remember that the reader is going to be judging the product that we are presenting. Once we decide, okay, we are going to prepare some document, we can think of the process. Let's say how are we going to do it? And basically we divide this into two major steps. The first one is when we prepare to do it, and the second one is just the actual writing. So we start with preparing, and when we talk about preparing, we're thinking of not just let's say planning the process, but also thinking about the information that we are going to be including, um, reflecting on the activities that we are have been preparing, on that we want to include, organize the information in one way or another. Those are things that we need to do, and which um, perhaps require a bit of time before we do any writing, before we have picked up our pencils, or before we get into the keyboard. We have to start reflecting and thinking, what am I going to be writing? And people do it in different ways. Some keep a diary, some just keep a piece of paper together with them, and every time they come with an idea, they just write it down so that we make sure that we are not forgetting it. Different ways. Next to this, we need to start organizing the information. Remember, during the last session, we were talking about using tables and templates to organize all the information that we are collecting from the field. I think it is very important to continue with this process, because you are talking with a lot of people, you are collecting a lot of information, and it becomes very easy to get lost. If you present a messy text, nobody understands it. So you need to structure it, and you need to put some order into it. And that becomes easier if, for example, from the very beginning, you start thinking in some tentative table of contents of whatever document you are preparing. Even if you are just writing a short email, it helps if you start with some tentative table where you say, from the beginning, I'm going to say this, and then I'm going to say that, and then I'm going to finish with this or that text. Once we have this sort of general idea, and we have a lot of ideas to write, then we need to start writing. And as we say here, we are basically talking about 7 major steps. We have a tentative outline, no, this structure that we were just mentioning. So the first step is to try to expand this outline. So for each of the sections, you try to add a bit more information. Perhaps the sections are not connected one with each other, but that doesn't matter. It is as if you're filling in the separate chapters of a book or of an article, and you're just filling information into each one separately. The next step is that for each of these sections, you try to make sure that you are saying what is the point of the section, what is the information which is going to be presented, why is this section important, and at the same time try to link one with the other. Let's say the introduction with the first chapter, with the second chapter, with the third chapter. So in this way, you start linking them and making one whole draft, which of course leads to the third phase in which you prepare a first draft, a first, not just an outline, but a first document as complete as possible, but without worrying about all the style or the perhaps language problems. No, you don't pay too much attention. But this is just a draft by which we are interested in checking that we have the information that we want to have. The first draft needs to be revised, of course. You need to perhaps share it with a few colleagues. You need to go and look at it again. One thing that helps a lot, and which I am sure that all of you have already tried it before, is to leave this document for a few days and then look at it again afterwards. So put it out of your head, put it out of your mind, do something else, and then go back to it after a few days. This is a very simple trick that all of us use. Once you are, let's say, out of it, it becomes easier to look at it with more critical eyes and to realize where are the problems, where are the flaws, where is information missing. If we just look at it and look at it permanently, we don't see the mistakes that we have. And sometimes we don't even notice that we have written our own name with mistakes. Then we go to the fifth phase where once we have the whole document, then we need to write an introduction for the whole document and some conclusions. In the introductions, we need to say, what is this document going to be talking about? Why is it important? Who do I want to read it? And in the conclusions, of course, we present the most important lessons, the ideas that came out of the analysis, and of course, the recommendations. Then we need to get some feedback. I'm going to talk in a minute about feedback, which is going to help us understand if or see if the document is well written, if the information is well presented. And only after the feedback do we go to the final edit, where we, of course, check the language, where we put it very pretty, where we add the photos, where we look at the font. But only then, many times we start taking a lot of time editing the text when this is not complete. And then we need to work extra, we need to do it again. So I would say, don't worry about editing, don't worry about checking language checks. We do that at the end. Of course you have to do it, but don't do it before all the information is well presented. Now, one of the steps where all of these steps are important, but one of the steps which I would like to emphasize is this one, number 6, which is getting feedback. Because none of us are professional writers. We all have to write perhaps in a language which is not the one that that we are more comfortable in, and we all have difficulties. So one thing that really helps is to get feedback. and to get feedback from those who know about the subject, so our colleagues or some specialist who knows very much about the subject that we are writing about. And it is also good to get a feedback from people who, yeah, who may not know about the business, or who are, I don't know, somebody who's totally in another circuit. Maybe our partners, our friends, our neighbors, somebody who can also help us to see if the information is well presented. When we talk about feedback, basically we need to ask people to look at this document and to give us comments on these different issues that we present here. Of course, we have to ask about the content, and that's where we ask some specialist. Is it complete? Is there everything included, or is it perhaps too much? It, but we can also ask somebody to tell us, well, how the text is organized. Is it correct? I mean, is it attractive? Is it interesting? Is it appealing? Am I not repeating too many times the same information? Is the same chapter perhaps included? Is the same information included in different chapters? Or does the reader find that it has a logical flow? All of those things can be very easily mentioned by somebody who has, well, an outsider, let's say, who is only looking at the document for the very first time. And all of these ideas, let's say the answers to all of these questions, are going to help us make a much, much better document, which only then can go to the editing part and to the final presentation. Now, once we have this final document, regardless of what it is, it can be a short article, it can be a long article, it can be just a blog post, but once we have it ready, then we are ready to share it, and we can just give it not just to our colleagues, but to the whole world. We can put it online, and then anybody else can see it. The question is, why should we do this? Why do we bother with sharing? I think that what we were saying at the beginning, it is very important that we try to engage and to reach out and to involve as many people as possible with the information that we are producing. Because if you remember from the very beginning, the purpose of an experience capitalization process is not just to produce a nice document, or it is not just to have a nice workshop, but the idea is to have lessons and ideas and recommendations that can be put into practice so that we improve the experiences that we are busy with, so that we improve the projects and activities. So the more people we reach, the more chances we have that their activities are going to be improved, that they are going to be, well, benefiting from the information that we are providing. So this means that our task when we are facilitating an experience capitalization process, or when we are actively involved in it, we are not just producing a document, but we have to work hard so that this document reaches out those people who can benefit from it. Which means, of course, that we need to develop some comprehensive communication strategy that is going to let this document go where it has to go. Now you're going to say, okay, we are not communication specialists. Probably we are not, but by following some basic ideas, I think that we can all do a lot so that our documents are not just staying on our shelves or on our computers. Which means, what I was saying, developing a comprehensive communication strategy, which again, it is some sort of project where we need to include other people, have it very clearly presented, knowing what we are going to be doing during the next days, but trying to organize it in a simple way so that we can get help from others, and we don't need to make it too complicated. We don't need to hire some super communications expert. What we need to do is to make sure that we follow some key ideas and that we are reaching the target people we want to reach. And whatever your communication strategy, we start perhaps with the most important one, which is identifying the target audiences. That is identifying who do we want to reach and trying to get to know these people as as good as possible, because that is going to shape the whole process that we are going to be involved in. So very shortly, this communication strategy starts with the target audiences, and then we go, as we will see, we need to have clear objectives. What do we expect out of this process? What do we want these target audiences to do, or how do we expect them to benefit? We need to have the messages very clearly presented, and we do this by producing specific products and by using specific channels. And then, of course, we need to complete this, and once again, we need to try to get as much feedback as possible. So if we have a few minutes, we can go through some of these slides, and we start with the target audience. As I was saying before, when we organize a process, there will be many people who join us. And many of them will come to a workshop, for example, and we will work together for a few days in a face-to-face meeting. But there will be many others who are also involved in the process. Now we are thinking of those who are not part of the process, but who can benefit from the lessons that we are drawing. We need to know very clearly who these persons are. If I expect that people in any given country are going to be reading my document, I need to know who these people are. What are they doing? Why would they be interested in my document? What kind of information are they looking for? It is very different if I'm thinking, let's say, of policymakers, or if I'm thinking of people who work in a development organization which is relatively small and who are far away from the city. Both groups may be interested in what I'm saying, but they will have totally, let's say, different needs. Policymakers, let's say, they just want a very short document, quickly to the point, and most of the times this is going to be printed, while perhaps my colleagues or colleagues in another organization may require a lot of detail, or they may require a lot of photographs or a lot of images or some diagrams, or they may require data. Those living in the cities may find it easier to access internet and to find a lot of complementary information, while in some places it may still be very difficult to get this. So therefore, they would expect me to provide much more information. So what I'm trying to say is that we need to identify who is going, or who do I expect to be reading my documents. But it is not just identifying. We need to try to understand as much as possible who they are, what do they want, what, uh, how interested they might be in what I'm going to present. And I also need to know a little bit about the way in which they are normally collecting information. If my target group is basically using radio programs, then the best thing for me would be to produce a radio program and to send information via the, audio information. If, on the other hand, my target group, I don't know, it is very active on social media, then I would be very clever if I'm using social media, if I organize a social media campaign using different techniques, because in that way I'm going to be able to reach them much better. So this is basically, this is perhaps the most important part, trying to understand very clearly who these persons are, what do they want, what do they need, and how do they receive information. And then on the basis of that, I get to select what are the main products that I am going to be using to present the information to them. As you can see on the module, There are many different products. Written products, the ones we use most, but as I just said, we can also use audio products. We can put things online, or we can also use short videos. And any of them are going to be successful, depending, of course, on who the target audience is, what do they use, how do they feel more comfortable. Sometimes people tell me, oh, you have to produce videos because that is fantastic. Probably. It's a very simple way of sharing information and it is very attractive to watch a video. But personally, I find it very difficult. Maybe, I don't know, I'm not used to them. So if somebody sends me a video, probably I am not going to be so interested in watching it. I would prefer, perhaps, a short article that I can print and that I can read whenever I feel at ease. But that depends on me. So in the same way, we have to know what is it that this target audience prefers so that we provide what they want. For each of these types of products, you have different options. And you can say that there are videos and videos. There are audio products and audio products, and all of them are different, and all of them will require specific techniques to produce them. If we go back to the written products, one thing is to prepare some policy briefs, and another thing completely different might be to prepare a long article or even a long book. Again, we will decide to produce a long book only if that is what our target audience is interested in. At the moment, we don't have the time to go through all of these different products, but they are very well described in the modules. So I would invite you all to go and look at them, what information is provided, and then perhaps you can look for additional information. There's a very interesting publication from FAO which looks at all these different options and which tells what are the things that we have to pay attention to when we want to produce one of them. The important thing to know right now is that we have all these options and we don't have to limit ourselves to producing articles when we can. Why don't we do cartoons? We could very well prepare cartoons if, for example, this is the best way to reach our target audience. And then next to the products, we also have to think of the channels that we are going to be using to distribute these products and in this way to reach the target audience. What you have to think of here is that we have channels which are, let's say, more conventional, which go in one direction, or we have channels which allow us to interact and to send information and at the same time to receive information. What we need to do is to, again, select the best options, depending, of course, once again, depending on the target audience that we have, but also depending on what do we expect. Many times, if we say, I'm going to prepare a policy brief because I just want to inform policymakers, most of the times we would say, okay, I'm just going to send information and I don't expect any reply. But if I am sending information to my colleagues, most probably that will be different because I will expect my colleagues to reply to me, to share information back to me. So in that sense, I would need to use a totally different channel. Again, another important thing to highlight here is that we have channels which are face-to-face. So, and we also have nowadays a lot of virtual options, as we're doing right now. Again, you can see some division here when we're talking about conventional, when we're talking about digital channels, when we're talking about face-to-face. We can use these different ways of sharing information, connecting with each other, expecting to receive information. And once again, the option that we are going to be selecting will depend on the target audience. So if we go back to our communication strategy, you remember that the one before last, the step, which was one before last, was to add the details. So we need to identify very well who the target audience is. We need to know their products and channels, but then we need to plan in detail. How are we going to go about it? Who is going to be doing what? Who is going to be doing specific activities? When are these activities going to be taking place? How much is it going to cost? Who's going to be trying it out? Who's going to be monitoring it? And how is it going to be taking place? So once again, we have this strategy which we need to roll out and implement as a sort of little project, starting from the objectives, but trying to consider specific activities, time, resources, money, and a short monitoring and evaluation plan. And as part of that monitoring and evaluation plan, of course, we need to get feedback, because we need to know, and it is crucial here, we need to know if the whole communication strategy is working or not. I'm sure that you will all have experienced the situation where you prepare a very beautiful document, where the document is the best you have, it has all the right information, and then after a few months you realize that very few people have seen it. That's you can imagine as a feeling of failure, because the document, we don't prepare it for ourselves, we're preparing it for somebody else. And if we put all our efforts into it and we add a lot of interesting information on it, and you feel that this is the best you have, and then nobody reads it, then it is clear that we're doing something wrong. So we need to make sure that we know, are people reading it? Are we providing what they want? Are we, not just in terms of the content, are we really there with the content, but is the content reaching the people? Are they happy with what they're reading? Is this what they wanted? Are they reading it because they really wanted, or this is what they needed, or they're just leaving it there because this is, okay, maybe very pretty, but a bit useless? These are all things that we have to pay attention to, and that we have to monitor regularly to make sure that we are able to, well, improve on the way or do it better the next time. This is the main ideas I wanted to share at the moment when writing, when documenting, and when sharing. Of course, there is a lot more to say about this. This is quite a comprehensive part. There's a lot of information on the module itself, but of course, we can continue discussing this on the email. So, back to you, Sophie. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Jorge, for the explanation. We have prepared a few tools to help you developing your communication strategy. And what I have put here on the slide is this communication matrix. What is your target audience? What are the objectives, the message you want to pass across, the product and the channels, the timing and the frequency you want to use them, the budget, the roles, and your key performance indicator that will help you for your monitoring and evaluation. What is interesting to know is that you should not only select one product or one type of channel. You need to have several of them because they will reinforce each other. So you can have video, you can have audio programs on top of your written material. So you have to think a little bit, of course, of your target audience. This communication matrix is the first thing that we ask you in the assignment to fill in, to know a little bit more about what you want to do, where you want to go, who you want to target, and how to go about it. Then in the assignments, we have added 2 more tools, and you can choose which one you prefer, which one is most appropriate, adapted to your needs. The one you have in front of you is the template FAO has been using for documenting good practices, promising practices, experiences, innovation. And this template, you use it also as a checklist. And you can use it as a checklist not only now when you document, but also before, when you start collecting the information, when you are going to do your analysis, because all that information, you put it in there. And this template checklist, you don't need to use it when you are going to document as such your good practice or your experience, but this template will enable you to gather all the information. So you should see this as a kind of working document that will enable you to have the overall picture. And then according to who is your audience, what is their preferred product, you use the information that is available in the template and you will modify it, adapt it to the support. So for example, if you're working on agriculture input management and you want to actually address this to the decision makers, to the farmers, you will actually do different things. For the decision makers, the policy makers, you may decide to have just a short paper, recto verso, and maybe another document which is more in line with why it's important that they take a few decisions about this. For the farmers, you will have, for example, information which are more visual. So you will have images or drawings with the explanation, and you can decide that you're going to have either a little video or you're going to have an audio program that you can broadcast on the local radio. So these are the things that you have to decide when you're doing your communication plan. This template is the tool to be able to collect all the information, and then you decide what will be the product that you want to do out of it. We have added another way of documenting, and this has been prepared by CIAT, and this is the bone to bone, it's the skeleton. So it's also nice, when you're writing a case study or a case profile, it's also asking you more or less the same question as in the template, but in another way. So we wanted to share these tools, and there are others available, so that you have practical job aids that you can use to document your experience. And this is the assignment that we have prepared for you